Welcome to Embedded. I am Elecia White, here with Christopher White. Our guest this week is Kristina Durivage, a software engineer by day and hardware hacker by night. Before we get started talking with Kristina, I want to mention that I am once again looking for a new gig, either consulting and mentoring or contracting and writing code. Please let me know if you need help, show@embedded.fm, or hit the contact link on embedded.fm or logicalelegance.com. If you'd like a little help, well, now's a good time to ask for advice. The first hour is free, so, send me an email. I'm not hard to reach, and if I'm too busy, I'll let you know.
Hi, Kristina. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how's it going?
Could you tell us about yourself as though you were on a panel at a conference?
Yeah, so, my name is Kristina, and I am a front-end engineer for my day job. And then I started picking up electronics as a hobby somewhere like in the past, 5 years or so. And I have done a ton of projects since then, and I find it like a really fun way to spend my time. So try to talk about that.
Cool. You've heard the show a bit, so you have heard about Lightning Round, where we ask you short questions and we want short answers. And if we're behaving ourselves, we won't ask for lots of detail, but we'll see how that goes.
Sounds good. I'll try my best.
Okay, what's a tip you think everyone should know?
We'll probably cover this again later, but keep battery size small, or think of batteries first, because it's like the hardest thing to build into later.
Do you tend to complete one project or start a dozen?
I try to complete them, like the big ones, but sometimes there's projects that you sort of give up on, and those kind of go on the shelf for a while. So I'm not really great at it, but I try to complete the ones that I'm really particularly motivated about.
Favorite programming language, either for work or for fun?
Well, I hate to say JavaScript because everybody would make fun of me. It's both my favorite and least favorite programming language, but probably JavaScript.
Do you modify clothing to hack, or do you make clothing from scratch?
Generally trying to make it from scratch, just because if I end up having to redo it, it's a lot less work to have to modify something that I've started, or it's easier to just I try to keep the stuff that I make myself very simple, so that way if I'm not too emotionally invested in it, if I need to do some rework later.
Something you know now that you wish you'd known 5 years ago?
Don't trust everyone as an authority. My greatest example of this is I went to a hobby store to look for a servo that I needed, and it was just a RC car type hobby store. And I asked the guy if these servos could be used for Arduino, and he said no, and looked at me like I was from the moon or something. And I'm like past me, 5 years ago, me would have been like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, so whatever, and then left. But I was like, okay, can I just see it? And sure enough, it was just like the same continuous rotation servo that you buy from anywhere. So
I've had similar experiences at hobby stores.
Yeah.
Confidence. That's all you need is confidence, and people believe
confidence.
You.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite voltage level?
5 volts, just because it works for Arduinos and particle photons and all that. And the WS2818 LEDs.
All right. So you said you are a front-end engineer. Now,
Yep.
I'm an embedded systems engineer, so I work on devices. And I know there are front-end engineers and back-end engineers.
And mid-end engineers?
I assume that front-end engineers are in charge of the wheels and the back-end are in charge of the brakes. I don't know. What does that mean?
Yeah, so like the backend people tend to do more with databases, like getting stuff out of databases faster or adding columns, and the middle, which there isn't really a whole lot. Usually it kind of like what is the middle is split up between the front and back end. But the front end engineer, that's what I do, tends to be getting wireframes from the designers and building that out and into whatever and for my job, whatever JavaScript library of choice, framework of choice, and actually designing the website or taking the designs and implementing them.
But you do fairly data-intensive applications, right?
Yep, yeah. So then we'll end up getting like talking to the database people or the backend people about what the data should look like and what we'll need to actually display what the designer wants.
It can be really tough to display data in a way that is human readable. I mean, Tufte had all of those books about how to do good data visualization. How are there principles? Are there things you learn about how to do these data visualizations?
Yeah, it's generally, you try to think of what question the user will have when they enter into your application and get those questions sort of answered as soon as they can. So that way, that's sort of you're never going to be able to nail it 100% for everybody, but you can try to get the most bang for your buck without having the user having to click around a whole bunch. So trying to keep that in mind is a good thing when doing designs and stuff like that. So
customer-focused design is a thing for you too.
Yep. Yeah. That's for the work stuff.
I think you said in one presentation that programming the Arduino is harder for you than your normal gig. What do you mean by that?
It's just there's like a whole nother level of things that can break on you, which I presented at the JavaScript user group. And when you tell JavaScript developers who already kind of have a bunch of different layers that can go wrong, like here's an actual physical layer where you could possibly electrocute yourself or possibly burn yourself on a soldering iron. Or you just buy a part that doesn't work and you can do everything you can in the code for debugging, but it's just an actual physical problem. That can be very tricky to deal with when you mostly do just like software.
I see that and I understand. And I have to admit that looking at JavaScript applications, I'm lost in the number of libraries and knowing which one is currently in vogue and which ones will make me look like an idiot. So it's funny to hear everybody thinks the other stuff is harder.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I mean, the thing there's always going to be someone that thinks your opinion is wrong. So you just kind of have to do your best and go for it.
One of the big differences that we hear about, which may not be accurate, is in how fast things change in the front end, back end, in the web world. Whereas with the embedded world, things change, but they're usually on the periphery. It's, there's a new processor and it can do this, but most things are done in C or C++, and there aren't a ton of libraries we're importing that are changing rapidly. Is there a big difference where you guys are having to keep up with just really rapid changes in the frameworks you're using and people abandoning things or dependencies breaking?
Sort of, I mean, yes and no. There's always stuff changing probably faster. There's like the quote unquote marketplace of things are more probably evolving more rapidly with software just because you don't have to actually like ship stuff out. But on the other hand, it like what you choose to bring in and what you choose to adopt is up to you and up to your team and your bosses and all that. And so Minneapolis has a lot of like big, like Best Buy and Target are all out here. Those are kind of like a couple of big ones. And there's other employers too, but they tend to be a little bit more, risk adverse of needing everything to be super current all the time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's out there, but you don't necessarily have to, be there. Like I let there's other people who love to do that stuff and they can, make the to-do lists on every new application or every new framework that comes out.
They're probably all in Palo Alto.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, exactly. Let San Francisco worry about that.
So I have another question related to your day job, but we're going to get to the hacking soon because, I mean, that's more what the show is about. But you mentioned doing pair programming at work. And so many people talk about it. And I've done it with one other person that I connected super well with. But I almost never do it. My team's too small. Often it's only me. And while I can pair program with myself, people look at me very strangely. What is it like for you? How do you do it?
And it's just, if it's the team that's local here, just 2 people in a room or multiple people in a room with TV up, and there's always someone driving. And either if it kind of depends on if it's someone who's more experienced that's driving or less experienced that's driving, and kind of talking about some of the solutions, as it happens rather than in code review. So that way, especially for something that's a little bit more complex, it's easy to go in the code review and be like, well, why didn't you do this? And come back, well, I did that like 3 days ago, and here's the whole thing of why it won't work. But if you work with someone with you right there, they can be with you in that process of trying different things and seeing why maybe the most obvious solution didn't work the way that everyone had planned. It's also good for junior developers, having them drive, and sort of there's different ways you can kind of guide them along. And generally, I like to ask questions, like if they get stuck, like, okay, what is the next step of the process for debugging this? And it's good for making sure that your knowledge isn't siloed or kept in one person.
One of the reasons it worked for me is that the person I was working with and I had very similar skill sets, although different knowledge, and very similar personalities. Is that a requirement? I mean, you said junior developers versus senior developers work together. That makes sense for sharing the information, but doesn't it just slow down the senior developers?
It does, but I mean, it would slow down the process a lot more if something happened and that person wasn't there anymore. So it's sort of investing in the team and investing in the junior developer, of helping them get up to speed, and sharing knowledge is generally worth it. I worked with way too many quote like cowboy developers who just sort of do everything and then don't share, and it's not really it's not a good team, and it's not a good place to be. Except if they're them, then they get to feel super productive all the time. But being on the outside of that sucks. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody knows what they're doing, and nobody can figure out the code.
Yep. Yeah, they commit stuff, and you look at it, and it's like, I mean, like, I guess I see conceptually how this works, but if they're on vacation and something happens, I'm going to have to spend a lot more time looking at this than if they would have, worked with somebody when they were doing it. And it's good too, because I'll get caught up, like, I'm at senior level, and I get caught up on the silliest stuff sometimes, and it's a lot better to have someone help me from going down my own rabbit hole of like, oh, you just need to do this. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think if you have a senior and a junior and you end up producing the work of 2 medium seniors, then that's better. And you're training your junior. I think it can work. I wish I could use it more often. But let's get on to hardware hacking.
Yes.
Where should we start with that?
I can start about kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
Start at the beginning, do the storytelling method.
Yeah.
So my dad's an electrical engineer, and he, we're going to really get into the story of Kristina's life here, but from a wee age, my dad would try to get me to look at electrical diagrams and understand kind of what was going on. But being like, a kid who's into like dinosaurs or whatever, the utility of what he was trying to teach me I never really grasped it. And I remember him trying to be like, well, you could build robots. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Robots are cool. But then, back when I was that young, there was just not that, there wasn't as much out there that you could just go to the store and get robot parts as easily. I don't even know where. Maybe Radio Shack had some stuff. But so when I graduated college, I had, just kind of a regular day job. My dad and I started brainstorming. Well, I was sewing at my parents' house for some reason. I think it was dog sitting or something. But anyway, I was sewing at my parents' house, and my dad asked me, like, do you ever think about putting LEDs in clothes? And I'm like, that'd be really cool, but I really have no idea how to do it. And so we started kind of throwing ideas back and forth. It started as like, what is when you have a lot of LEDs, like regular LEDs kind of together and like in a matrix. There's a word for it.
Key matrixing.
There's like a guy's name.
Charlie plexing.
Charlie plexing. Yes.
Charlie plexing. Yes. I'm like, there's a guy's name involved in the word, but yeah. So we did one of that, and he was showing me that stuff, and we had some problems with like LEDs ghosting, and it was really just like my mind was a little blown. But we moved on to the NeoPixels, the 2818 LEDs, and you could cut a strip of them and reattach it so it went like up and down and up and down, up and down until it was a rectangle. And so we had, I think, an 8x8 or an 8x10 smaller array, and then it just sort of grew and grew. And once I figured out the functionality of the particle line of products, and it really let me, I could program the hardware stuff and figure that out and kind of then put that aside and then get into the web stuff that I knew really well. And that's what I really like about the particle photon stuff, is just there's like a separation of problems there that's really, really fun to deal with. So anyway, the LED arrays grew, power problems grew, my knowledge grew, and then I've been trying to figure out what other things I can put LEDs in ever since.
One of your projects involved a Skillrix concert?
Skrillex.
Skrillex.
Yep.
I've heard the music.
Yeah, there was so I went to Minecon Paris. I don't remember what year that was, but one of the things was a Skrillex concert. So I sewed EL wire in a skirt, and the EL wire from Cool Neon, and they've got, Cool Neon has this battery pack that's like 8 AA's, and it's really, really cool. But this was baby Kristina, not really. The thing about batteries I mentioned before is I tried attaching like a little harness to attach it to a skirt, but I put it right on the hem. It was like maybe a knee-length skirt, and then the EL wire went around the bottom hem. But then I tried putting the battery pack there, and it was way too heavy, and it like really like salted my dancing game, which is not that great to begin with. And I think the battery pack kept falling out and stuff. So it wasn't, I mean, like EL wire on the hem of a skirt is not super exciting, but I learned a valuable lesson about batteries that day.
So where do you put your batteries now?
Try to do it in the lower back.
Yeah.
Usually the skirts that I make, I'll have like a belt that has like a zipper pouch in it, and then have it on the back part. That's like a really good spot to put it. It's nice and anchored and doesn't move around too much.
And having a nice thick belt usually is good for holding things on.
Yep. Yeah. You can handle the weight. And then I switched to I haven't done any bigger projects, but these there's these Anchor Power Core 5000s that have put out pretty good amount of juice and have a pretty good battery life. So I switched not the TweetSkirt, but the Tech Sash. I switched from using like the big heavy LiPo batteries to the little Anchor Power Cores, and I like those a lot better. Okay,
so we have a Tweet Sash.
Yep. Well, there's two, and they're kind of the same thing. So I started out with the TweetSkirt, which is a skirt that like knee length skirt, and then along the front of it was the LED strip like soldered up into a rectangle, and so that made it really flexible vertically, so that way it could kind of move and flex with like the hem of the skirt as I walked around. And then I have it hooked up to Twitter, and there's a moderation process because Twitter. And
you don't just hook it up to the president's account and let it go.
Oh yeah, nope, not going to happen. So like tweets would come in, and then I would pull up a website on my phone that I would log into, and then say, yes, this is good or this is garbage. And then it would get queued up to show on my tweet, on my skirt for a certain period of time. Or if there was none other in the queue, it would just sit there. So that was really fun, except for it was very, very, the LED array that I soldered myself with the strips broke a ton, and I had too many conventions where I was soldering under a table, or like the first Minecon when I Minecraft convention that I wore it to and it broke, and I didn't bring a soldering iron because, again, baby Kristina. And I had to tweet out like, hey, does anybody bring a soldering iron? And luckily there's a maker space that was demoing there that had some, so that I got to get snuck into the demo hall before they opened and soldered it up. And that was all very fun stories, but I got tired of having to fix it all the time. So, and then the moderation process was fine, but a lot of times people they want to see what they wrote right away.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to wait for it to go through all because there's like, besides just the waiting for me to okay it, it's got to get queued up and go through the whole thing. So I switched to like the pre-made LED arrays that are like, I think 32 by 8 or something, that are all just like one piece. But those aren't as flexible as the strips put together. So they go, the pre-made one goes, it's a sash, and it goes just across the torso where it doesn't really need to bend that much. And it went off text messages, which I was a little but sketchy about, but I'm like, people's like a little bit more willing to attach their phone number to their identity. So I wasn't as worried about it. And then I would not wear it to like, places where I was worried about, I would wear it to places with grownups basically, or places where I could shame everyone to act like grownups. And I say that, but we have a thing in Minnesota called Mini Demo where startups, or they ask me to do it just as like a maker person, go up and give PowerPoint free, but not really, demos of their startup ideas or whatever. And so I went up and I put the number up on the big screen and I said, all right, guys, remember there's a code of conduct, please be adults. And the first thing I got was like butts, just like across the thing. And I just laughed. I'm like, you know what? I'm not even mad. That's good juvenile humor. I'm okay with that. So, yeah. And so that's kind of that whole process. So, just trying to limit the amount of lag so people can just see their stuff go through faster, and then make it more durable. So that way I don't have to bring soldering irons everywhere.
What do you have in your travel toolbox now?
Well, I usually bring a soldering iron anyway, just because. But
what do you have as a travel soldering iron? I
have a USB one that people are always surprised it works, but I've never used it for a long project. But and I don't remember I think I just looked up USB soldering iron on Amazon or something. It's not a name brand, but it does pretty good for just when you need to touch up something. If I'm like traveling with a huge suitcase, I'll just bring my regular one and just have it's worth the space to have a nice soldering iron.
The USB ones, I think they charge a capacitor, so you end up getting more power than you think you do for short bursts. But you shouldn't use it to build a whole board. Yeah.
People ask me like, how does it even work? And it's like, I just shrug. I don't know. It doesn't fry my computer, and it just seems to work. So it's good enough for me.
Magic and electrons in there somewhere.
Yep, exactly.
So you've mentioned particle, and and I did see some talks where you talked about Arduino. Are these your favorite platforms?
Yeah, Arduino just for ease of use. It's good, kind of, easy to upload stuff to, easy for finding lots of support for. And the Photon, they also have pretty good, there's a lot of people using it, so you have a lot of stuff you can search for online. And then you have the just the Wi-Fi baked in, and the particle cloud baked in makes it super easy for me as a web developer. And that's what I try to tell either other web developers about. It's just so easy to get going with that, as long as you can kind of get over how intimidating hardware can be if you're not in that field.
And the Photon is the one with the cell modem?
No, that's just the Wi-Fi one.
Okay.
I
the
don't
Electron has the cell modem. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't use that. I use my phone as a wireless hotspot. So it's kind of effectively the same thing, but then I don't have to worry about canceling a monthly plan or whatever. It's just, I just use my phone.
Okay. Back to batteries. If you're making a skirt and you're lighting all these lights, are you worried about getting burned by the battery?
It hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. God willing, it just hasn't happened yet. Sometimes the batteries get a little warm, but I guess I just probably put some fleece or something or felt in it so to have some padding. But the nice thing about the text scrolling ones is that most of your LEDs are off for most of the time. So your current you need a lot of current, but you don't need like so much that it's going to really go through the batteries, or you'd have to have a dangerous amount of current going, if that makes sense.
It does. Where do you get your LEDs?
eBay a lot of times. Just try to anticipate what I'll need in 2 months and get it from the slow boat.
So you didn't do Adafruit or SparkFun or any of the?
No, I'll get my boards. I'll get my boards from Adafruit, and I got like their last Ada box, and that kind of stuff. But for just kind of LEDs, bulk LEDs, I'll just tend to go for eBay, which is probably not great, but I do love Adafruit a lot. But I'll get the expensive stuff there. LEDs are pretty cheap. Yeah.
Do you do any hardware design besides the electronic layout of actual wires and LEDs?
No, I don't. That's all out of my wheelhouse. I tell people I just know enough to be dangerous. Like, I have the art of electronics. I bought it. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I know conceptually how electricity works, but for me, it's just what I need to do to get something built. So, and then I can ask my dad for the rest.
It's handy to have a family member who's a double E.
Yeah. Yep. Actually, it absolutely is. He's like more or less like obligated to help me.
And you sound a little apologetic that you're not doing hardware design.
I guess I wish I don't know. I say I wish I would have more time or motivation to do that stuff, but I really just like building pretty things. So when I need to build pretty things, a lot of times it's LED, wire, battery, Arduino, and just different layouts of that without having to get into it any more than that. I did get, my boyfriend got me a pair of these Mace Tech RGB glasses for Valentine's Day. And I was like looking into how to hook one up to the particle so I could have their glasses with LEDs on like the front part of it. And I was looking at the layout, trying to figure out how to hook it up like through serial to interact with the photon. And then showing it to, and I just was like, whatever. And I ended up just they do come with they call it the hacker arm, which is just kind of like a proto board arm without anything on it. But like little pinholes. And so you could I just put like a photon on that and ported the library over it. And that was a lot easier.
I ask not to make you feel uncomfortable, although I think I possibly have. Sorry. I don't do hardware design either.
Oh, really?
No.
I just thought all EEs do.
I'm not an EE.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I do software. I just, so many times the hacker community expects you to do everything from back-end database design to particle to laying out boards. I mean, I don't know why people have to apologize for not having all the skills, because nobody has all the skills.
Well, it seems like people do.
Yeah. I think the internet people all do, but then the
internet people all do because you see the things that they show you.
Yeah.
You see the final products and you don't see the struggle. You don't see them going to ask their friends for the piece they don't know. You don't see the electrical engineer asking, oh my God, how do IP addresses work?
Right.
It's nobody knows everything. And I get a little frustrated because...
I always come back to, it's hard to learn things without a reason.
Yeah.
And so if you're just feeling like, oh, I should learn this because everybody else knows it.
That's how I feel about KiCad.
It's not really a reason unless you have something specific you want to do with it, right? Like, oh, I want my career to expand and I want to be doing electronics in my career. Okay, that's a good reason. You should probably go to school, or there's this project and I can't get past this step without making a board. Okay, that's the time when you start talking to people and doing tutorials and stuff. But just in the abstract, this happens to me all the time. It's like, oh, I'd love to know how to do this. So I'll get a textbook and then I'll put it on my shelf and just stare at the spine for 3 years.
Yeah. And
osmotic learning doesn't work nearly as well as I hope it would.
Yeah, I don't know. I have the aspirational bookshelf.
Well, I mean, I look at KiCad, I look at schematic capture, and I can read schematics fine. I just don't write them. And then I go and I take classes about robots and AI, because as much as I'd like to be able to do electronics, what I really want to do is play with robots and make things smarter. So I don't know. I'm going to stop apologizing for my inability to make schematics. I'm just going to accept that and move on. And the world will have to live with my hand-drawn schematics forever, or until I change my mind.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good way to go about it.
Okay, so enough ranting. How do you keep yourself going when the technology is hard, when you need to learn something, but it's not easy?
It's just my end goal always is so like cool in my imagination that it's like, well, this really sucks. So maybe just stop doing it for the night, or, take off for a few days and just kind of noodle over it or whatever. And maybe do some like passive Google searching or asking some friends, or just not really fully committing yourself and committing time to solving that specific problem, but just sort of getting a better idea of maybe the general edges of it or something, where you just are making some progress or not, or just being okay with not making progress and going from there. Trying to remember the last time that really happened. I guess it was this morning. I can't be all like, I just know everything now. Cause I was trying to get Bluetooth to work, on this, the Bluno, which is the DF Robot Bluetooth Beetle. And, I haven't done Bluetooth stuff in forever. And it was just like, well, I can get it to work on one app on my phone, but that's fine. That's enough. That's all I need.
Sorry, I'm not going to debug your problem on the air. Afterwards, we can talk more if you want.
Okay. Well, no, I figured it out. Bluetooth is hard.
Bluetooth is hard to get into. And then once you've got it wired, it does get a lot easier to manage what expectations you have.
Yeah, expectations management is a big part. That's one thing I've learned.
So having an application you care about and that you dream about, and then taking breaks, sleeping on problems is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Sneaking up on them. I liked the idea of moving around the edges. I do sneak up on problems sometimes. And then I'll look and I'll realize that I've figured it out. I just didn't mean to.
What's bad is when the problems notice you snuck up and they turn around and they scare you.
Like, yes.
Do you have deadlines for your projects? How do you get them done?
My deadlines recently for things have been like the closest thing I have for deadlines on these projects are if I'm doing something for a convention. Like the last electronics project I did was for an anime convention in the Wisconsin Dells. And I was cosplaying a character from a Dungeons and Dragons podcast who has a magic umbrella. And I really wanted this magic umbrella to be LEDs on there's a word for it. The part of the umbrella, the bigger part of the umbrella, whatever. Canopy. And trying to get... So my thing with that was just getting it done for that convention. Otherwise, I'm going to be I'll still be a fine cosplayer. I just won't have my sweet LED umbrella. So having stuff like that is good. And even when it gets frustrating, you know that you're going to be showing it to a bunch of people who are going to know who you are and appreciate it. Even if it breaks after the first day or whatever, you'll still have a good audience and you still get some good pictures with other people and stuff like that.
How do you have the time and energy to do this after a full week of software development?
Well, it's, I haven't been doing software development that, I've been doing it just the job stuff.
After a full job.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's not, this is fun. Building light up stuff and, going to a convention and looking like awesome and like being a beautiful, bright creature is really fun. And that's motivating enough. And then there's also something about making something physical that you get to hang on to. Like most of the websites I've done, the websites I've done for my job tend to be, they're very utilitarian, like they solve a business problem or something like that. But, people go in and put data in and look at their data and interact with data and that kind of stuff. But then going and building like a really fun skirt that you get to actually wear and go out in the world and people say like, hey, that's awesome. That's super motivating and it's super fun. It's
very rare that in our work life, people say, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah. Usually
there's not too many things that we get to do.
Even if they think it's awesome, they're not going to they're only going to leave a review saying it sucks. So.
Right. Yes, I have made the mistake of looking at reviews of things that I've been involved with.
Yeah, don't do that.
Get very angry. Hey, no, that's not right at all. Wait a minute.
So you make these, and then I expect, like many makers, somebody says, well, you should make a lot of those and sell them.
Yep.
Do you think about doing that?
Yeah, I started a business, like I had my business for contracting, but then I was like, let's just have another name for it. But honestly, how to mass produce stuff and how to handle if things break. Like the sash is pretty durable, but I still don't want to be on the hook if things keep breaking, especially because there's so much involved there. So I guess I'd rather just put the time and effort into showing other people how to build their own and giving the code out. And then also like people have built the stuff, like the components of the sash. Someone, I think it's the Switch Embassy, if I had to remember the name, but they made a shirt that they made like the electronics and like a little pouch for the electronics to go into, and then you could attach that to something that you already had. And that, if I was going to do something, that's what I would do. I don't have to worry about sizing or keeping like a clothing inventory or anything like that. It would just be like, here's a thing that you can put in whatever you want. I'm sure they're successful, but I have a pretty good career for software, and I'm not going to drop everything to go do something like that. So that was kind of a meandering answer, but
No, you hit the points I was actually hoping you would, which is, yeah, you could totally go do that. Other people are doing it. You could do it. It isn't fun.
It isn't fun.
I mean,
yeah.
You're doing this hobby because it's fun. It amuses you. It makes you laugh. It makes other people laugh. It makes you feel good. Why do we have to capitalize on our fun and make it work?
Well, that's just one aspect of it. Like people expecting you, oh, you're doing this great thing, so you could turn it into a bunch of money, and don't you want a bunch of money? But there's also the aspect of people want what you're making.
Yeah.
And that's flattering and nice. And writing about it for me is enough. Okay. Mm-hmm. You like it enough, go build it.
Yeah.
But I wish early in my career someone had said, don't try to monetize your hobbies because then they don't become hobbies.
It's a good way to ruin them.
Yeah.
It is a really good way to ruin them.
No, like writing, so I have a book coming out, I'm a chapter in an LED project book coming out in June. And full disclosure, this book was in process for 3 years. So there's stuff that, the book will be great for kind of a high level or, how to build some of this stuff, but I wouldn't follow my project exactly as written. But writing that book was not the most fun way for me to spend my time, but it also was not terrible. And I really liked, taking all the pictures and getting everything assembled or whatever. That's my way of monetizing, get my book, I guess. But, what is
the title of your book? I think it's made by O'Reilly, but only because you're connected to some of the O'Reilly people I know.
No, it's not O'Reilly. It was, it's NoStarch Press. I talked to O'Reilly like a few years ago, but this is NoStarch Press. I think it's 10 LED projects for Geeks. The editor is John, and the editor, and that's who they list on all the websites, is John Beischetel. And, I have a book in there about I have a chapter about building the tech sash, and it goes through everything. But if you're listening to this and you're going to get the book, just all the power stuff, just get an Anchor power core instead.
A lot of people we know in here. Wendell and Lenore wrote chapters. All right. I will totally link this. 10 LED projects for Geeks from NoStarch Press. Cool.
Yeah.
How do you decide what you are going to write about online versus trying to get paid to write versus working on your project instead of writing about it? I mean, there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah. For me, it's just when I'll write about it after I've done it and shown it and gone through like the different iterations of the tech sash or the TweetSkirt or whatever. They've been out in the world. I've written, shown them to lots of people. I've gotten lots of feedback, and I kind of know what to expect. And that's when I'll write about it. That's when if someone comes to me and says, write a chapter for a book, I'll be like, yes, I can write about this. And I know the kind of the fuller picture for this. But like right now I'm playing with making LED resin beads, and I'm just sort of tinkering with it. And I don't know if they're going to break. But that's kind of right now just playing with an idea and then seeing how it evolves over time when you have more time to play with different things. And when you wear it out, people will always give opinions on this or that. So trying to get all that together and listen to feedback or ignore feedback. And that's when you can kind of write about it more.
Okay, so LED resin beads.
Yep.
2-part resin. You put the LED in. Are these the NeoPixel style LEDs?
Yeah, the sequin or the little button, like where it's just an LED on a little board. So you have to pull the wires out still. Yep, the wires are there. Then you feed. The wires come out one side of the bead. There's still a hole in the bead for the thing that you string up through the chain or whatever. But then so the wires come up, and then you have it go feed up to the chain to the back of the neck, and then have the battery pack and everything in the back of the neck. Okay. So we'll see. I gave one as a friend, and I was like, it was her birthday, and I'm like, well, let me know if this breaks or gets too hot or whatever, because as much as this is a gift, you're also a guinea pig. And I mean, she's gotten enough comments, and I don't think she minds her guinea pigdom too much, but stuff like that is fun to play with. Is it frosted? Though I started out with clear. The most recent iteration, I started out with clear and the LEDs facing out, and the worst part about resin is you do have to let it sit for a day without tinkering with it, which is the worst ever. Yes. But the ones that I made recently have pearl powder in it with these little sparkly things, and then the LEDs are faced in, so that way the when you have two different colors, they sort of fade a little bit better. Yeah. It's really, really fun. It's just, it's not as dramatic as a TweetSkirt or whatever, but it's quieter, more subtle, but that has a beauty of its own. Yeah, and I'm thinking if these end up being pretty durable and not, I'm worried about the LED heating up too much in the resin and frying or something. But if they end up being durable, maybe people would want to buy them. I don't know. Yeah, if you could give them a little air bubble to live in, but I don't know how to do that. And I can totally see you could put silver glitter or any colored glitter. Yeah, I'm all over this. Yeah, it's really cool. It's good stuff. You just have to let it, you have to put it somewhere where you'll leave it alone, which is rough. Yes. To do it at the end of the day. Yeah. All right. I'm so distracted by that. We're going to have to move on because I just can't. Well, imagine. Okay, I'm going to really blow your mind now. Ready? LED resin earrings. That's another thing that I'm trying to figure out. Oh, see, I don't wear earrings, so that's fine. Okay. But as you were talking about it, I was like, I want buttons for my jacket. Ooh, that'd be so cool. Because that would be an easy power situation. Yeah. And everything's anchored well, but it would just be so subtle and quiet, and I could just totally see that. Although you'd have to make it well mechanically secured, because you don't want the wires to be what's actually anchoring it. Yeah. Holding your jacket closed. Okay. No, we're going to go on. And this is
Who are you arguing with?
Myself. Oh. Yeah. Who am I usually talking to? You also give talks. You mentioned your talk to the JavaScript and a group conference, and I know you've given some other ones to less technical audiences. Mm-hmm. What's the best part about speaking?
Just reaching out to new people, like with like I end up speaking at a lot of like different kinds of girls, ladies, women in tech type organizations and stuff, and showing them the like felt owl that has a light sensor in it, where it doesn't look like a traditional electronics project, but it's like a light up stuffed toy or something like that. That's really fun. And I like seeing, or like I gave a talk to some middle schoolers once, and I talked about everything from like high fashion electronics like the TweetSkirt is doing to the kind of lily pad stuffed toy type stuff, and being able to show different people that there's more electronics than like there's a lot of garage door opener projects, and there's a lot of different things, but there's also like fun soft toy stuff that you can get into, or the things where you don't need to make it look like it'll still look finished, but it's not like Apple super polished, if you get what I'm trying to say. Like the aesthetic is different, and that's okay. You can go for that, and it's still fun, super, like it's still a really fun project.
That's hard. It's easy to get discouraged because my device doesn't have a pretty package, and it looks like I put it together with hot glue and duct tape, which is what happened, but I wanted it to look like a professional did it.
Yeah. And I mean, well, most of the time it's just, and this was a big thing for me too when I was learning, is like you get these projects or these little, like the kits or whatever that have the board and the jumper cables and the LEDs or whatever. And so you end up with something cool, but it's like, well, this is going to fall apart if I bring it anywhere. And I don't really see, again, the utility in this. But from like, once you learn this stuff, like me and my friend Jerry made a game where it was just your kind of standard maker kit Arduino components inside of a kid's kitchen playset. And we made a game off of, you put different like vegetables into the pan, and then the game would tell you what vegetable to put in, and you'd have to do it in a certain period of time, or, turn the water on or whatever. And that's all like potentiometers. I think we used capacitive touch sensors with different patterns on them for the vegetables, and basic components, but then in like a fun package, and then a lot of hot glue, and different things. And you can make like a game.
And it costs more than a game like that might be if anyone made it in huge consumer quantities, but you get a lot out of it. I mean, if you're making it for a kid, there's just this pride of they're playing with it.
Yeah, and they're having fun. And we submitted it to Alt Control GDC and got into that. So we actually got to show it off at the Alternative Controller Expo at GDC one year.
And I really like the idea that more of the game conferences are exploring the physical aspect, the physical games. It's not all VR and computer games.
Yeah, it's really, there was one where it was like they took stuffed dog butts and then mounted it to a board, and then part of the game was like you were a dog in a park and sniffing dog butts, and then you got to do that to the stuffed dog butt. And that was that was really cool. But I don't think, and it's just for being creative. It doesn't have to be about, I'm sure that they had a game that they sold in some capacity, but I would guess that they didn't try to mass market dog butt sniffers.
So many titles here. Show titles are just spewing out.
Well, it wasn't my idea, so unfortunately, because that would have been, that's good stuff.
But you can even make something as simple as a tic-tac-toe board and do something like this and have it be fun for a family get together. As an introvert, sometimes I don't like going to get-togethers, but if there was a game that I made that other people were playing, even if it was silly like tic-tac-toe that was not challenging, it still would be something to talk about. And so I wouldn't have to, talk about people's politics or whatever it is people talk about.
Yeah, like having a good kind of icebreaker that isn't just like, well, the weather, it's something that's just there that you can show and talk about.
How are those Minnesota Vikings?
I tell you, I have no idea.
What do you wish someone had told you when you started out making?
I brought this up before, but having the confidence to take advice or ignore advice. People will give advice based on what worked for them. And it can work differently for you, or just, based on how, like as a less confident person, you're not going to really go, like someone gives you advice to like, yeah, you go tell them what's going on. And you're like, well, I'm scared. So you can just take people's advice or ignore it. And it doesn't need to be, there's no shame in that. Like if you ignore someone's advice and then you mess up, that's probably going to be fine unless it's like a big thing. But, for most things,
ignore the advice on which way to put the battery into the battery charger.
Right.
That's not advice.
That's physics. But you know what I mean? Like most of the things that people tell you, you can like, don't worry about making a mistake while you're learning. Most of the time there's, ways to fix it or there's a way out of it. So know what advice to take and know what advice to ignore.
Or ignore all the advice and make mistakes, and then next time you'll know which advice to take.
Yep. Yeah, you can weed out who's giving you good advice that way, too.
How do people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Twitter/Galicia or Galicia, Gelicia. There's also portfolio.galicia.com. And then you can email me at kdurivage@galicia.com.
And where did your handle come from?
So in middle school, again, going really back, the deep reaches, but my dad had a bookshelf that I would take a lot of books from. And they were fantasy and whatever, but I took this one called Thieves World, which was edited by an author I really liked. And I really didn't it was a little bit like just too much for middle school Kristina, but there was, I really liked the name of this person as I was struggling to understand what was happening. So I think she was the owner of a brothel. That's what I kind of have learned when I've Googled the name since then, like, where did I get that? But it was one of those things as technology evolves and you get handles in different places, like that name just sort of ended up following me until I was actually introducing myself to strangers on the internet with it. So it's just sort of followed me as I've grown up.
Isn't it weird how you can have a perfectly good name and then you can introduce yourself as someone else and everybody then calls you by that name?
Yeah.
It's kind of magical. We think we're born with our names and that there's no other alternative, but there is.
Yeah.
You just have to have the courage to say, hi, I'm whatever you wanted to say.
Yeah. Or the first person that's like, I really don't know you as Kristina. I know you by your internet name. And it's just like, whoa, that was easy.
And I remember the Thieves World, Aspirin wrote a lot of work in there. And for the longest time, if I had had your courage, I would have introduced myself as Lynn Thandy because she was totally my favorite character.
Is that from Thieves World? Because I really don't remember.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, sorry.
She was one of the wizards.
Okay.
And she masqueraded as a man. It was just so cool. And I have to admit, I had to look up her name, but I knew I was talking to you, so I had the opportunity. I don't keep all this in my head all the time.
Yeah, I read a lot of the Aspirin's Myth Adventure books, but
yeah.
Thieves World was a little bit, I guess, maybe too serious for me, but I don't know.
Myth Adventures was not.
No, Myth Adventures was very funny, but yeah, Thieves World was a little serious.
Christopher, do you have any other questions?
Well, I was wondering.
I mean, there's so much we can talk about, but yeah.
I was wondering if you take any lessons from your hobbies back to work or vice versa, or do you have things from your front-end development world that you wish people doing embedded kind of things knew, or vice versa?
I think probably expectations management and patience. But that's sort of like whenever you're doing programming, all that factors into everything. But don't be afraid of debugging. But, there's a lot of fancy debuggers that people always use, but there's still a place for debugging with system.printout or control.log or whatever. So don't be afraid to go back to basics with debugging is kind of the thing that I am not ashamed of anymore. I don't know. That's kind of it, is just, and then don't be afraid to start with a small, simple project and that you can build off of, rather than trying to build the whole thing from right away.
That's good advice.
Yeah. It's a lot less frustrating.
Yes.
Do you have any speaking engagements coming up?
Nope, not really. I submitted, but I haven't gotten accepted yet. So.
All right. Well, sorry.
Just the book. Yep.
Yeah, the book's pretty exciting.
Yeah, finally. It's been a while.
Do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave us with, Kristina?
Go out there and build stuff. Don't be too scared to start.
Our guest has been Kristina Durivage, software dev by day, hardware hacker by night. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you also to Christopher for producing and co-hosting, and thank you for listening. You can always contact us at show@embedded.fm or hit the contact link on embedded.fm. And I mentioned last week we have the new overview on the blog, so it's easier to find stuff. So I do encourage you to go look on embedded.fm. Now, a quote to leave you with. This one from Bob Ross. Sometimes you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your masterpieces. Embedded is an independently produced radio show that focuses on the many aspects of engineering. It is a production of Logical Elegance, an embedded software consulting company in California. If there are advertisements in the show, we did not put them there and do not receive money from them. At this time, our sponsors are Logical Elegance and listeners like you.